Luo Feng, now much wealthier after exploring the dream domain and possessing over 80 million merit points, finally felt he was no longer poor, although he also had reward points from the treasure trove called Infinite Space. He intended to save them for exchanging the God King Second Realm section of a special grade inheritance. Considering it far more valuable than ordinary resources, he went to visit his master, Emperor Chu, who was immersed in comprehending the complete Great Tao of Destruction origin. Despite creating 5 ultimate realm secret techniques and ranking among the top emperors, Emperor Chu still could not break through. He understood that only by mastering the complete Tao could one remain on the land of origin through its destruction and rebirth and become a native life form of the next era. In the current era, only Emperor Cheng had achieved this feat. Emperor Chu warmly received Luo Feng and mentioned the recently established Blade River Sect. Luo Feng explained that the sect merely gave ordinary cultivators more opportunities and held little significance to someone at his level. He then asked his master whether there was a way to obtain the 5-colored treasure medicine. Emperor Chu explained that each portion of the 5-colored treasure medicine cost 10 million merit points and that he could help Luo Feng purchase at most 2 portions. Due to the imperial clan's rules, royal members could not exploit the treasury for profit by acting as intermediaries. Luo Feng gladly accepted the offer. The emperor then revealed the origin of the 5-colored treasure medicine. It was refined from the heart of a sector beast that had surpassed the God King level and originated from another source world. This extraordinary sector beast had broken the limits of fate but still found cultivation difficult after leaving its home world. So it crafted treasures using its own body and sold them to the ancestors of the 2 ancient countries. Because the beast could regenerate its organs, it produced these treasures in large quantities, which kept the prices relatively affordable. Emperor Chu further explained that the body of such a powerful sector beast perfectly matched the Great Tao of Destruction origin and that every part of its body, heart, blood, and bones, could be transformed into cultivation treasures. He then introduced an even more precious treasure called the Boundary Beast Blood Talisman. Personally created by that same sector beast using its own blood, a single token cost 1 billion merit points. When activated, it allowed the user to temporarily condense a complete Great Tao of Destruction origin within their body for approximately 3 epochs. Emperor Chu offered to exchange one for Luo Feng if he could prepare enough treasures. The emperor admitted that he was not particularly skilled at teaching disciples and believed Luo Feng's achievements came primarily from his own extraordinary talent. Nevertheless, he wished to support him as much as possible with resources. He then asked what Luo Feng needed for his cultivation of the Great Tao of Life origin and the Origin Tao of Matter. Luo Feng replied that he required only a small amount of flesh and scales from the 24 forms. Emperor Chu explained that the 24 forms represented one of the many forms that could appear after reaching the ultimate realm of the Great Tao of Life origin and was an exceptionally special life form. Primordial bloodline creatures born within the land of origin possessed powerful bodies despite their low intelligence. Most primal Chaos Realm creatures could already display the 10-direction world life form, while creatures possessing the 24 forms were extremely rare. Even among God King Second Realm beings, Ultimate Realm God King creatures often surpassed the 24 forms entirely. And beings beyond the God King level were true primordial life forms that had escaped the braided cage. He further explained that Ultimate Realm God King primordial bloodline creatures were strictly controlled by the 2 ancient countries because their bloodlines greatly increased the chances of becoming an emperor or monarch. Even emperors like himself had no authority to provide a single drop of their blood, unless someone possessed treasures valuable enough to interest the ancestors. Obtaining such bloodlines was impossible. However, Emperor Chu promised to investigate the cost of acquiring some materials for Luo Feng and suggested that he first seek them in the Thunder Ancient Country, which specialized more deeply in cultivating primordial bloodline creatures and possessed a greater variety of them than the Flame Wind Ancient Country. Luo Feng asked Emperor Chu about obtaining materials from the primordial bloodline creature known as the 24 Forms life form. Emperor Chu explained that a complete refined bloodline was extremely valuable, costing 1 billion merit points in the Flame Wind Ancient Country, while the Thunder Ancient Country sold it for 600 million merit points. Since Luo Feng only wanted to study the life form rather than refine its bloodline, Emperor Chu said he could purchase 1/3 of a corpse instead of an entire body. Although the price was far beyond Luo Feng's current means, He knew these materials were crucial. Without them, he could only imitate the 24 forms using divine power, producing a much weaker version. If he obtained the materials and fully understood their essence, his formless and intangible technique would allow him to transform into a true God King second realm primordial bloodline creature and unleash even greater power than such creatures themselves. Luo Feng was in no hurry because he had not even mastered the first of the 24 forms. He also knew that formless and intangible had a limitation. It could only transform matter born within the source world and could not imitate beings beyond the supreme rules. Fortunately, these primordial bloodline creatures were native lifeforms cultivated by the two ancient countries. Emperor Chu then gave Luo Feng 2 vials of 5-colored treasure medicine worth 20 million merit points and reminded him that only his true body should consume them. Otherwise the effects would be wasted on an avatar. Afterwards, Emperor Chu asked why Luo Feng had not claimed the inheritances of extermination of 72 blades and 8 tribulations life form. He explained that although infinite space contained even better inheritances, higher-level inheritances required enormous amounts of reward points. Even opening a new branch of the Great Dao only earned 10,000 reward points, while the ultimate realm section of a special grade inheritance cost around 60,000 reward points. Luo Feng realized how precious ordinary high-level inheritances truly were and immediately claimed both inheritances while also delivering treasures worth 20 million merit points to his master. Back in the Star Tower, Luo Feng prepared to consume the 5-colored treasure medicine with his perfect divine body. The moment he swallowed it, an overwhelming force erupted inside him and fused with both his body and soul. A mysterious network of veins formed within his body, increasing his strength and speed by 50 to 60%. More importantly, his body and soul became perfectly aligned with the great Tao of destruction origin. He instinctively felt a desire to cleanse the world by eliminating weaker life forms, believing this would create a better and stronger world. Realizing this dangerous instinct, Luo Feng understood why sector beasts naturally sought destruction. They were born from the great Tao of destruction itself. Fortunately, his powerful will allowed him to suppress these impulses, knowing that this extraordinary state would only last while the medicine's power remained. Luo Feng immediately entered cultivation. While studying the special grade inheritance chaotic whole beast body, his understanding of destruction underwent a complete transformation. He quickly deduced the 4th, 5th, and 6th strikes of the inheritance and realized that destruction was not merely annihilation but also cleansing and rebirth. This new perspective greatly reduced the difficulty of comprehension. Luo Feng then focused on creating the powerful secret technique world unification, the strongest technique that could be comprehended at the first realm of God King. By gradually understanding its essence, establishing its foundation, and coordinating the 6 paths, he continuously overcame obstacles and improved at an astonishing pace. 3 eons passed while Luo Feng secluded himself and made full use of the medicine's effects. Eventually, the power of the 5-colored treasure medicine was exhausted. The mysterious veins in his body and the rune structure in his soul collapsed, and his perfect connection to the great Tao of destruction origin disappeared. Although he felt disappointed by the loss of that extraordinary state, he understood that these 3 eons had completely transformed his comprehension of the great Tao of destruction origin and had brought him tremendous gains. In one of the outer regions of the dream realm, Luo Feng's black-scaled, golden-horned avatar awakened from its stone-like state after finishing cultivation with the 5-colored treasure medicine. Since his perfect divine body was fully focused on comprehending the great Tao of destruction origin, his other avatars had remained dormant. Deciding to temper his spiritual will, he headed toward the deep layers of the dream realm. Upon entering the deeper region, Luo Feng immediately felt an overwhelming spiritual pressure and endless mental oppression. Only experts whose wills had reached the God King ultimate realm could remain conscious there. And even most ancient beings could not enter because they had to constantly suppress the residual will within their primordial bloodlines. The dream realm creatures in these depths were also far more terrifying. Luo Feng soon encountered 3 flame exotic beasts whose strength rivaled the stone monster leader. One attacked him with black flames, forcing him to split into smaller avatars and flee, though one of the clones was destroyed. After briefly exploring, Luo Feng concluded that he was far too weak to obtain any treasures from the deep layers. Random creatures there could rival entire teams from the reincarnation tower. and even emperors or monarchs might fail to escape if they encountered the most terrifying species. He also noted that these dream realm creatures possessed traces of will but no souls and were forever confined within the dream realm. Over time, old creatures perished and new terrifying ones emerged. This led Luo Feng to wonder whether the dream realm was truly a dream, as some experts believed it was merely a dream created by Yuan, while others rejected this theory because the treasures obtained there could be brought into reality. Choosing a secluded spot on a barren mountain, Luo Feng transformed into a stone and began cultivating the Great Destruction heart refining technique. The combination of the dream realm's immense pressure and the improved technique, strengthened by the 5-colored treasure medicine and his deeper understanding of destruction, caused unbearable pain. His spiritual will felt as though it was constantly being shattered and reassembled. Unlike the 7 emotions heart refining technique, which was pleasant but difficult to sustain, the Great Destruction heart refining technique excelled through long-term endurance. As he continued cultivating, the dream realm's erosion gradually seeped deeper into his spirit. After half an era, his exhausted mind was completely overwhelmed, and he fell into a deep sleep. At the same time, all of his avatars throughout the outside world and infinite space also became dormant. Within the dream, Luo Feng forgot his identity and became an enormous primordial life form flying through space. He was pursued by incomprehensibly terrifying beings and experienced only fear and an instinctive desire to escape. Desperately hoping that an ancestor would save him, the dream was fragmented and chaotic, filled with endless fleeing. Since he was asleep, the Great Destruction heart refining technique naturally stopped, and because his spiritual will had already reached the bottleneck of the God King level, he slowly regained awareness. As consciousness returned, Luo Feng realized he was dreaming. Such an experience was extremely strange because his level of spiritual control should have made dreams impossible. He tried to stabilize the dream after realizing that the giant creature he had become was unimaginably vast, even grander than the complete life origin Great Tao and carrying a hint of the supreme rules. The entities pursuing him seemed even more terrifying than the entire source world itself. However, the dream eventually collapsed and disappeared. Awakening on the barren mountainside, Luo Feng found that his memories of the dream had become vague. He only remembered becoming a massive creature and being chased by something terrifying. But he could no longer recall the appearance or methods of his pursuers. Since he had entered the dream realm specifically for spiritual cultivation, his slumber was temporary, and once the refining technique stopped, it was easy for him to wake up. Feeling mentally exhausted after cultivating for half an era, he left the deep layers and returned to the outer regions of the dream realm. Back in the mysterious land within the primordial cosmos, Luo Feng's divine power incarnation continued observing the complete life origin Great Tao. He realized that, thanks to the 5-colored treasure medicine, his understanding of the Great Tao of destruction origin had reached a level comparable to his understanding of life in only 3 eras. However, he also knew that his cultivation speed would slow significantly after the medicine was exhausted. Luo Feng carefully considered the value of his treasures. The 5-colored treasure medicine was already extremely precious, but the boundary beast blood talisman was even rarer. With even Emperor Chu being able to exchange for only one, he decided to save the talisman for the second realm of the God King stage, when he would attempt to reach the ultimate realm. As for the remaining 5-colored treasure medicine, he planned to use another dose 30 eras later, believing that with enough effort he could obtain more. Finally, Luo Feng returned to his cultivation routine, alternating between comprehending life and destruction and using the fusion of the 2 paths to overcome bottlenecks. As he immersed himself in this steady accumulation of understanding, he soon received a second invitation to action from Emperor Gui Shu. Over the long years, the most active members of the Reincarnation Tower were Emperor Gui Shu, Wuxia God King, Luo Feng, and Cloud Sky God King. Since Cloud Sky God King possessed only one true body and was relatively weak, he only joined operations when he was certain of his safety. King Tian Du, Great Freedom Sovereign, and Black Fire Demon Lord participated only occasionally, while the strongest members, Wind City Empress and Earth God King, rarely gathered for missions. Through these repeated operations, Luo Feng gradually became much closer to the other members of the Reincarnation Tower. At the headquarters of the Blade River Sect in Huyang City, Luo Feng's direct disciple Xin Yu returned from his travels and announced that he was preparing to break through into the primal chaos realm. Elder Luo Sa, who was actually Morosa, was delighted because Xin Yu would become the first disciple of the Blade River Sect to reach that realm. Morosa reflected on the enormous gap between Xin Yu and his own disciple. Moyu Qingyan. Xin Yu had been born in a weak tribe but had cultivated an unlimited godly body and achieved profound understanding of the laws, already comprehending many primal chaos realm techniques. In comparison, Qingyan remained far from a breakthrough despite Morosa's efforts and support. Although disappointed in Qingyan's progress, Morosa remained protective of him because he had raised him from the true God stage. He concluded that if he could become stronger himself and eventually reach the ultimate realm, Qingyan's position and future would also improve. However, he found cultivation difficult and knew that relying solely on absorbing the power of heaven and earth would take an extremely long time. Morosa hurried to see Luo Feng and informed him about Xin Yu's impending breakthrough. Luo Feng was unsurprised, believing Xin Yu possessed the potential to become a godly king and that reaching the primal chaos realm was only a small step for him. Luo Feng had specifically chosen Xin Yu as a direct disciple because of his humble origins. Unlimited godly body, exceptional comprehension, and strong spiritual will, considering him a weaker version of himself. Morosa then complained about his own slow progress and subtly asked for resources. Luo Feng reassured him that good news would come soon, implying that the materials Morosa desired were nearly within reach. Morosa immediately understood and happily departed, though he still found cultivation confusing and preferred simply lying around and growing naturally. For over a century, Luo Feng had been trying to acquire materials from the 24 forms biological materials, because they were essential to his plans. Even Emperor Chu could not obtain them due to the strict regulations of the Flame-Wind ancient country, where elite primordial bloodline creatures were heavily protected. At that moment, Luo Feng received a message from Black Fire Demon Lord. Black Fire Demon Lord had built a major force opposing the Thunder ancient country and possessed extensive connections among its godly kings due to his past as an important guest elder. Although he had once attempted to steal primordial bloodline materials and become a monarch, his failure forced him to flee and establish the Black Fire Gate. Despite being hunted by the Thunder ancient country, he still maintained many friendships and a strong reputation. Previously, Luo Feng had asked members of the Reincarnation Tower for help obtaining the 24 forms materials, and Black Fire Demon Lord had promised to try. Now he informed Luo Feng that he had succeeded. He had secured approximately 1/10 of the corpse of a 24 forms primordial bloodline creature, which could be exchanged for treasures worth 3 billion merit points, a price within Luo Feng's means. Luo Feng was overjoyed because acquiring these materials had been incredibly difficult. In the Flame-Wind ancient country, the price was 10 billion merit points, while in the Thunder ancient country other godly kings demanded even higher prices. Even Jia Yin godly king wanted 6.5 billion merit points for a complete bloodline. After more than a century of dangerous operations, Luo Feng had accumulated only about 4 billion merit points after accounting for other expenses. Black Fire Demon Lord reminded him that the 1/10 of the corpse could not produce a complete primordial bloodline. But Luo Feng did not mind because he only needed part of the materials. The two agreed to meet in Huyang City. Soon afterward, Black Fire Demon Lord arrived at the city lord's mansion carrying a cloth bag containing the materials. Inside was a massive tail, half of a gigantic hoof covered in scales, and a large amount of flesh, blood, bones, and scales filled with powerful spiritual will. Luo Feng estimated that these remains were the leftover 1/10 of the body after the extraction of complete primordial bloodlines. When Black Fire Demon Lord checked the payment, he discovered that Luo Feng had given him slightly more than the agreed 3 billion merit points. Luo Feng explained that the extra amount was simply to thank him for his efforts over the past 30 years. Black Fire Demon Lord laughed and accepted the gift, as he had genuinely wanted to help Luo Feng and had never cared much about personal gain. Black Fire Demon Lord first stored away the jade vial and reminded Luo Feng that extracting parts from a primordial bloodline creature was strictly forbidden. The matter had to remain completely secret, with no leakage of any information or materials. Luo Feng acknowledged and confirmed he would not disclose anything. After that, Black Fire Demon Lord departed, holding the cloth bag containing the materials. Luo Feng fully understood how difficult it had been to obtain this 1/10th portion of a primordial bloodline creature's body. He had previously spent over a century attempting acquisitions across both the Flame-Wind Ancient Country and the Thunder Ancient Country without success, gaining only deeper insight into the complexity of the process. These creatures were guarded by monarch and emperor-level experts, and even those at the ultimate realm level were suspected to be avatars or incarnations of the two primordial progenitors, due to the extreme danger they posed if they ever escaped. After the transaction, Luo Feng returned through space to the quiet room in the City Lord's mansion and entered the Star Tower. In one of its spatial layers, he released all the remains. The moment they appeared, a massive half-hoof claw alone accounted for nearly half the body, resembling a towering mountain with hook-like claws stretching hundreds of millions of kilometers. There was also an enormous tail segment spanning billions of kilometers, along with scattered scales, flesh, bones, muscles, and a large amount of blood. The aura alone made Luo Feng instinctively hold his breath. He judged that the creature belonged to the 24 Forms life-form system, and although only at the second realm of Godly King level, its physical body was comparable to the top tier of that realm and even approached characteristics of an ultimate realm life form. At that moment, a huge illusory shadow emerged from the corpse, roaring angrily at Luo Feng. He recognized it as the bloodline will, a residual imprint from the original primordial life source passed down through diluted generations, capable of contamination and suppression. Those who cultivated the primordial bloodline path had to resist this influence, a path both dangerous and promising, as exemplified by figures like the Thunder Ancestor who had once spread such bloodlines across the land of origin. Ignoring the roar, Luo Feng focused on the structure of the remains. By magnifying the matter, he discovered that every 10 particles formed a stable unit, and 240 particles divided into 24 groups, each forming interconnected spatial structures resembling a perfect formation. This revealed an astonishing level of biological organization. He was deeply shocked, realizing that each basic unit of this life form contained 24 embedded spaces tightly bound in a self-sustaining cycle, making it extremely difficult to destroy. Compared to this, the 10 Directions world form was merely an entry-level stage of world life forms, while the 24 forms represented a far more advanced stage. Luo Feng also understood that his special grade inheritance only extended up to the ultimate realm, and although his formless and intangible ability allowed him to utilize it, it was limited to matter within the land of origin and could not exceed ultimate realm God King level, meaning further advancement would eventually require a shift in path. After more than 10,000 days of research, he finally comprehended the first form of the 24 Forms life form. Breaking through his last bottleneck, he realized that mastering the first form was the hardest step, and since all forms shared equal difficulty, this breakthrough meant he had effectively grasped half of the system, making subsequent forms much easier. This greatly improved his integration of the 6 branches of life, and he estimated that continued cultivation could lead him to the second realm of Godly King in the great Tao of life origin within 10 eras. Although his progress was stable, he remained cautious and did not rush breakthroughs. He also noted that his great Tao of destruction origin lagged behind due to fewer opportunities for direct observation. Despite having consumed the 5-colored treasure medicine twice, with the 24 forms materials available, his life path would clearly advance first. He then collected a very small portion of the remains, scales, muscles, bones, tail fragments, and a hook claw totaling less than 1,000th of the materials, and stored them for study. Afterward, he summoned Morosa to the Star Tower. Morosa, who had been eagerly waiting, arrived and was instantly overwhelmed by the primordial bloodline corpse, especially the massive hoof claw, triggering his instinctual desire as a sector beast to devour it. Luo Feng explained that this 1/10th portion of the body possessed strength far beyond a normal second realm Godly King and even contained traces of ultimate realm lifeform characteristics, and that obtaining it had cost him nearly all his accumulated resources and favors, though in truth most of it was for his own cultivation, with the majority intended for Morosa. Morosa, overwhelmed with excitement, confirmed that consuming it would allow him to break through to the second realm of Godly King and that its value exceeded that of 10 second realm Godly King bodies. Satisfied, Luo Feng transferred Morosa and the materials into a dedicated spatial layer of the Star Tower. Morosa immediately began devouring the blood and flesh, not merging with the bloodline but refining it through his internal realm. As the massive blood energy entered his body, his realm was rapidly nourished and began evolving at an accelerated rate. After obtaining the materials for the 24 forms life form, Luo Feng kept paying attention to Morosa's cultivation. This time, Morosa digested the primordial bloodline creature extremely slowly. He spent over 100 days absorbing its blood, then carefully consumed its flesh and bones over more than 1,000 days. Finally, he swallowed the several billion-kilometer-long tail into his internal domain and began a complete transformation. Returning to his true form, his body became covered in snow-white scales and radiated a holy light that seemed capable of purifying everything. The aura he emitted was so extraordinary that even Luo Feng was shaken. Luo Feng realized that Morosa had naturally evolved after reaching the second realm of the godly king. Unlike ordinary cultivators, who needed to comprehend secret techniques and cultivate step by step, sector beasts were born as perfect life forms with a complete growth path toward the ultimate state. As they advanced, they naturally understood the laws of the body, domains, assassination, and many other techniques. Luo Feng became eager to compare his strength with Morosa after the latter completely finished his transformation. At the same time, Luo Feng discovered that his second disciple, Xin Yu, had finally broken through to the primal chaos realm. At the Blade River Sect headquarters, all of Luo Feng's registered disciples gathered to celebrate. The sect had existed for only a little over a century, and Xin Yu was the first member to reach the primal chaos realm. The disciples admired him greatly and believed he represented the sect's future. The eldest disciple, Moyu Qingyan, arrived and congratulated Xin Yu despite feeling somewhat emotional. He had worked hard but still failed to break through, while Xin Yu, walking the law path with an unlimited divine body, had already succeeded. Nevertheless, the two disciples spoke cordially. Soon, Luo Feng appeared in the main hall together with Yuan. He praised Xin Yu's talent and officially appointed him as an elder of the Blade River Sect. Luo Feng then rewarded him with a complete set of Chaos Realm Supreme-grade weapon secret treasures, 100 billion cosmic sand, and 10 precious cultivation treasures. Xin Yu was deeply moved, realizing that these rewards would have taken him countless years to accumulate on his own. The other disciples looked on with envy. To Luo Feng, however, these rewards were insignificant. Powerful masters often bestowed such resources on their disciples. Yuan, standing nearby, had received even greater support from Luo Feng because he was regarded as the second pillar of humanity. Luo Feng could sense that Yuan's talent far surpassed Xin Yu's, as he already possessed strength comparable to a pinnacle primal chaos realm guest official. Yuan had forged his own path by combining illusion and reality, though creating a new path was extraordinarily difficult. Nearly half a century later, inside the Star Tower, Morosa finally completed the assimilation of everything from the primordial bloodline creature and ended his cultivation. His snow-white scales and holy light made him appear even more majestic. Morosa confidently told Luo Feng that he now felt stronger than his master. Luo Feng laughed and challenged him to a test of strength. First, he sent out his silver-clad avatar as a blade of light. However, Morosa's holy domain completely halted the attack before it could even reach him. Morosa proudly declared that he had no weaknesses like the imperfect second realm godly kings of Shi Kingdom and that Luo Feng's avatar could not even break through his domain. Luo Feng then decided to fight seriously. A gigantic silver-clad body, 1/3 of a world life form, descended carrying the massive blood shadow blade. Morosa was full of confidence and even allowed Luo Feng to make the first 3 moves. Luo Feng unleashed a dazzling strike that gathered all the power of his enormous body into a single explosive attack. The blade contained terrifying destructive force and struck Morosa before he could react. The attack eroded, sliced, crushed, and nearly annihilated his body, destroying 99% of it. Yet Morosa calmly reassembled himself almost instantly. As a sector beast, he possessed incredible regenerative abilities and was not easily killed by attacks derived from the great Tao of destruction origin. Completely restored and shining with holy light once again, Morosa smiled and reminded Luo Feng that he still had 2 moves remaining. After testing Morosa's new strength, Luo Feng realized that even 1/3 of a world lifeform's power was enough to unleash the blood shadow knife techniques with tremendous might, giving him around 50 to 60% of Emperor Guishu's raw power. However, His techniques were still far inferior to Emperor Gui Shu and Wuxia God Kane, who had both comprehended ultimate realm secret arts. Luo Feng then used another blade technique, creating a scar that split heaven and earth and cut through Morosa's body, hindering his regeneration. He explained that this move came from the special grade inheritance called Unity, a secret technique divided into 3 stages: Foundation, 6 Paths, and Unity. Luo Feng had reached the 6 Paths stage and mastered 6 different techniques. Morosa admired the attack and estimated that its power was only 30 to 40% of his own. Luo Feng then unleashed his strongest move, turning himself and the blood shadow knife into a rainbow light that entered Morosa's body and exploded violently from within. Morosa initially thought Luo Feng had used self-destruction, but Luo Feng explained that he had merely burned 1/10 of his avatar's power through a secret explosive technique. Even so, Morosa believed that a full power explosion would only reduce his strength by 30 to 40%. Luo Feng could only sigh, realizing that Morosa had already surpassed him. Luo Feng admitted that offense was not his greatest strength and invited Morosa to attack his world life form avatar. Morosa instantly released a vast white light that engulfed the entire star tower space. The corrosive force tore apart Luo Feng's body, but his world life form continuously regenerated. Morosa then fused with the entire space itself and launched numerous attacks, including crushing pressure and invisible destructive strikes against every structure of Luo Feng's life form. Despite using 30 different techniques, he could not overcome Luo Feng's extraordinary regenerative ability, as the damage he dealt could not exceed Luo Feng's recovery speed. After the battle, Luo Feng judged that Morosa's current power had already reached the pinnacle level of the second realm of God Kane, comparable to Emperor Gui Shu and Wuxia God Kane. Although Morosa's techniques were less refined, he possessed far deeper foundations as a perfect life form and had virtually no weaknesses. However, Morosa remained dissatisfied. He had heard that even peak second realm god kings stood no chance against emperors and monarchs. Luo Feng explained that the rulers of the 2 ancient countries were ultimate realm life forms wielding powerful secret treasure weapons, making them comparable to pinnacle sector beasts. Even his world life form, with its incredible recovery ability, could be completely annihilated by an emperor after only a few more attacks. Morosa went further and said that beings comparable to pinnacle sector beasts could likely break the braided cage and banish Luo Feng from the source world into the primordial space, where a world life form would be instantly destroyed. This shocked Luo Feng and made him realize the true terror of pinnacle sector beasts. Morosa then explained that the power of a true pinnacle sector beast far exceeded his current strength. Their techniques were even more terrifying, and even the emperors and monarchs could probably only match their power, not stop their destruction, because sector beasts possess numerous avatars. Even several equally powerful opponents could not completely prevent their attacks. The only beings that might truly threaten a pinnacle sector beast were the ancient ancestors of the 2 countries, the ancestor of the East Extreme Domain, and the transcendent Emperor Chain. Nevertheless, these supreme beings would not easily act, since failing to instantly destroy all of a sector beast's avatars would invite devastating retaliation against the ancient countries. Luo Feng then asked how much more primordial bloodline material Morosa needed to reach the ultimate realm. Morosa estimated that he would require another 20 to 30 portions similar to the one he had just consumed, equivalent to 2 or 3 complete primordial bloodline creature corpses, an unimaginably valuable amount. Although lower quality resources could also work, the quantity needed would be much greater. Luo Feng felt tremendous pressure but decided not to rush and wait until he became stronger. Finally, Morosa revealed good news. Having reached the second realm of God Kane, he could now fully activate the complete Great Tao of Destruction origin within his body. He displayed the entire Tao inside the Star Tower, filling Luo Feng with excitement. In the 2 ancient countries, observing a complete origin Great Tao normally required enormous amounts of merit points. Yet Morosa could provide permanent access to it for free. As Luo Feng observed the Great Tao of Destruction, he saw countless manifestations, including a gigantic 6-horned being and a terrifying dark red monster capable of devouring everything. He realized that each form represented a different path, yet all ultimately led to the same complete path of destruction. Since his true body needed to maintain the Great Tao's manifestation, Morosa asked for permission to send an avatar outside. Luo Feng agreed, and a simple-looking Morosa avatar happily left the Star Tower to enjoy life in the outside world.